Okay, now it says the typical features of advice text are listed below. You will need to refer to them in section 2, and of course, section 2 is the part where you actually uh, practicalize what you're learning, the theoretical part, the features you're learning here. When you actually get to apply them in an actually written text, that is section 2. Now it says the audience is someone who needs advice on a topic. Remember what I said about switching advice with opinion, good opinion, worthy of being followed. So the audience is someone who needs opinion on a topic. The purpose is to persuade them to take the advice. The purpose is to persuade them to take the opinion. The form or structure that an advice text often takes is in a series of points in logical order. You should structure the advice in a logical way by signposting. Remember, signpost, sentence connectives, and signposting. When you're using connectives like time order words or uh, transition words to connect one idea to another, one paragraph to another, you're signposting. Example to begin with. First and foremost, furthermore, in conclusion. You remember all these terms. Come across signposting. Every chapter of this textbook deals with signposting, so I'm not going to dwell on this. We know what they are. Signposts and connectives. Okay, now I'll give you a little bit of explanation here just to remind you. It says it takes a series of points in logical order, and this signpost is what helps you organize your points in logical order. Remember, I've said times without number that there's a subtle difference between chronological order and logical order. Okay, here we're not really after chronology, we're after logic. Is it reasonable? Remember, logical, if something is in logical order, it means it's reasonable, it makes sense. For example, you tell me if you get one and add it to another one, you get two. This makes sense. 1 + 1 = 2. Okay, but chronology is simply telling me that from 1, before I get to 3, I have to see 2 first. So chronology, sequence: 1 before 2, 2 before 3, 3 before 4. So you see that subtle difference there between chronology and logical order. So we're not after chronology here, we're after logic. As long as you're making sense, that's what matters. Okay, make me believe you by saying something reasonable, saying something factual. Okay, now how do I organize my points in logical order? I use signposts and connectives. Okay, signposts and connectives. For those who might still have difficulty in recognizing these terms and their meanings, I told you in class that the quick way to remind yourself is in grade 6. The writing lessons we had in grade 6, especially in the personal narrative and story writing, we dealt with the use of time order words. And then we also dealt with the use of transition words in information and explanatory texts. Okay, so once you hear signposts and connectives, signposts, think about time order words and phrases. When you think of connectives, think about transition words, therefore, however, to illustrate, to elucidate all these words or phrases, okay? So once I use these terms, signposts and connectives, which are otherwise known as time order words and transition words, they will help me organize my terms in logical order. Now it says you could also use presentational devices to make the structure clear. So the structure, basically your paragraphs, starting from your sentences into your paragraphs and then into the whole text. Remember, that is basically what we're dealing with here when we talk about structure. Okay? So in order to make your general text hangs together in terms of one sentence connecting into another and one paragraph leading into another, you can also use presentational devices. We talked about presentational devices in instruction writing. I hope you still remember that lesson. And of course, remember, advice combines all these and instruction is here. So that is why you're seeing subtle features, one feature from this one feature from that one, all coming together here. So we talked about presentational devices and instruction writing, where we talked about layout, for layout and visual aids. Okay, presentational devices comprise of visual aids, layout. And when we talk about visual aids, remember, visual aids basically how you're using emboldened texts, how you're using diagrams, how you're using titles and subheadings, while layout refers to uh, you know uh, putting things in the list format like bullet points or numbering. Okay, you remember all those tips I gave you, so you're also going to be using them here. Visual aids and layout all coming on the presentational devices. Okay, now that is it for the form. Now it says typical language features of advice texts are, first one, see, direct address. You address your reader directly. How do you use this? By using the personal pronoun you, talking in the from the second in the second person point of view. I've told you this before. When it comes to, we have the first, second and third person point of view, and in the second person point of view we only have you or your, just one personal pronoun. Okay, either in the object or subject depending. So to address your reader directly, talk to that person. It's very, think of it. If for example, you want to talk to your neighbor in class, a person, your mate that sits beside you, what do you do when you're talking to them? You, I'm telling you, talking to you. So that you, that's the second person point of view. And that is what you use in direct address. So when you're writing an advice, you want to be talking to your reader directly, and in order to do that, you use the personal pronoun you. All right. Now it says another language feature. It says it uses a conversational or informal tone. Conversational or informal tone. Now, you do this because you do not want it to sound as if you're commanding them. Remember, it's just an advice. You want to make them feel like you're on their side. You don't want to make it sound, you don't want to sound so stern, so strict, and and you have to create a relaxed tone, make the reader feel like you're on their side. And the way to do this is, instead of coming off, even though I told you, even though we're combining all these features of different kinds of text, we're taking them with grains of salt. We're very subtly, we're not taking them hook, line, and sinker. Now, for example, you're giving an instruction, right? And we know that a typical instruction text begins in an imperative tense, command verbs. You begin straight up with the verb, go here, sit down. When you're giving an advice, you do not want to begin with an imperative tense. To make it a relaxed tone, a conversational tone, you don't begin with an imperative verb or in the imperative tense straight up. You use conditional words like if. Okay? Now it says a conversational or informal tone which makes it sound as if they're on the side of the reader and softens any command. Example, the only thing for it is to, okay, as I use my own example. Now listen, using my illustration of getting rid of the bully. Now, now you want to give an instruction, you want to tell the person who has come to you for advice what to do. And you want to instruct them to go to the principal of the school. Now, instead of a typical instruction text would say, go to the principal, that's it. But in an advisory text, you could say, if you want to get rid of a bully, you could go to the principal. You see the difference there? The first one sounds like a command, but the second one, you've used the conditional sentence with the conjunction if. The use of that word if makes it conditional. You're telling them, I'm telling you what to do, but at the end of the day, it's up to you. I'm not forcing you. Make them feel like, give them a friendly tone. Make them feel like you're on their side. Don't make it look like you're bossing them, okay? Now, that is one way to do that, using if, okay? And expanding on the sentence instead of go to the principal, expand it with that conditional sentence or conditional clause at the beginning. If you want to get rid of the bully, come on, you could go to the principal. Okay, now that is it on conversational tone. I'm going to expand on this in a minute. Now the next one says clear reason. Okay, give clear reason when you advise. Give clear reason why your advice should be followed. Don't this comes on the facts and arguments. Argument says give reasons why your advice is good and also provide facts. Don't just tell me what to do. Tell me why I should do it. There's no better way to tell me why I should do it than to give me facts. You can allude to an experience you've had in the past where you did something similar and it worked. Okay, give me something factual. These are ways to give clear reason as to why your advice should be followed. Now, see the example giving here. It says, if you've got them trained correctly, you can send them off hunting. So, if you train, this excerpt is from this here. They're talking about handling a younger sibling. Okay, so if you train your sibling correctly, you can send them into doing whatever you want them to do, and they'll be at your beck and call. So now, giving me that reason, the fact that they will do whatever I want them to do, this is why you want me to follow your advice. Okay. Now, the next session of my video is going to go deeper into making your sentences more conversational, making it more informal, right? And I'm going to do that in another clip.